Buenos días. Vamos a continuar.
Good morning. We continue this Congress and the second day of the Congress. First of all, I would like to thank you for your attendance here at the School of Documentations. I'm Mr. Sanchez Vigil, manager of Photodocs. Thank you for those who are following us on streaming. Today's roundtable is going to be very interesting as those we heard yesterday. So today we are going to talk about social initiatives with three presentations of three important projects. The first one is entitled Tissue and Textile Oral Archives for Cultural Heritage. We have a Carmen Comadran and Juan Antonio Frias with us. Carmen Comadran is the director of Tierra Dos Communication and the initiative of the project I'm commenting, and Juan Antonio Frias is a researcher, disseminator, and collaborator of the project. I'm going to read some items in their bios. Carmen Comadran is a graduate in audiovisual communication and publicity, and PhD in communication and culture, audiovisual communication by the University of Salamanca, and she studied European studies. So if something is not right, please correct me. She's an audiovisual video maker, and all the work she does has a gender perspective. She is the director of Canal Beja and Comarcas Television. She directs Tierra Voz, a communication company. She's an audiovisual producer specialized in social content, cultural, environmental content, with a human's perspective in different formats and different platforms. Documentaries that she produced are various. She produced for most of the most important TV stations in Spain, and since 2020 she develops a Tissue and Textile initiative linking oral memory to cultural heritage. Juan Antonio Frias is a researcher with many publications related to the industrial textile archive and the history of snow. He's a promoter of interpretive roots and is member of the council. He's a promoter of activities to manage culture in Béjar and Ambras. He's a collaborator of the project Tissuing Archives. Thank you for your attendance. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation, and we would like to congratulate the effort and the attempt to give the cultural heritage of Béjar to be linked to the warmth of voices of people. We started in 2020 as a textile project. We have been working in this topic for a long time. I am going to show you this little video clip, short video clip, because I felt that documentary we produced on women in Béjar that went to Germany to work should continue. All these people are people who gave their witness testimony, and they insisted in us continue telling the story. So we've been working on that since 1991, and the textile section was sometimes left behind. We believed we needed to look into the future. However, that documentary of women from Behar in Germany attempted to reinforce everything we have, meaning knowing our heritage in depth, to give it warmth and to help us look into the future and look into other territories. Miguel Angel always says that Béjar is like Manchester in Spain. Some other people call it the red pearl of Castile, and many people believe that Béjar is the country of is the town in the Leon country. Depending on where you focus on, you will find some things or other things. So many centuries of textile history are there, and a great deal of topics to bear in mind. So we created this website you can access, and on this website you can find these stories that were created when we were walking around, as I was showing you at the beginning, and this is the result of many gatherings and meetings. We believe that in order to build a discourse to move forward to some place, we need to do that in a shared way. So many moments we came together not only to comment and project things, but also to have a conversation and to continue creating contents. The project collects experiences, and many other documentaries have been made that you can see on the website. The main one is called Industries with Soul. We involved really young people in our project. We conducted audiovisual workshops with them, and we also try to collect the memory of the elderly. Like I said to you, depending on what your focus is, you can see Behar, the town, from different perspectives. These are some of the workshops we did with younger members of our community and some summaries of the gathering. So the participation has been included on the website based on what the people who wanted to participate collaborated with us with pictures or stories, etc. So we wanted to give it somehow a continuity. In one of these gatherings, you can see him here at this corner. The public administration participated, the Chamber of Commerce, researchers, other institutions and organizations participated, and Juan Antonio, who collaborated with the project since the beginning, is there, and he contributed with pictures and the results of his research. And it was at that point in time when he said, we need to pay attention to the archives of the factories in Behar. That is why I think it is very appropriate for us to have him with us today. Good morning to everybody. My contribution to this forum is as follows. I'm going to give you 7 examples we have knowledge on and some illustrative material, enough illustrative material, for you to have a clearer understanding of how archives are in Behar at this point in time. So, the factory of Navaso, a textile company, is like Manchester in Castile. Our textile tradition dates back from long ago. I'm not going to elaborate on the historical section. But the steel navajo was created in 1780, and it finished activities in 2007. On the images that you can see, and this is an air picture, for us it's a big company in the industrial ensembles of Behar, with a long tradition, as I said to you before. This company had 300 workers with a very active mutual activities among the workers, mass and a great deal of activities, a catering section, a swimming pool, etc. And some important events. They published a review, a company review, since 1958 to 1972 on a monthly basis. It's a very enriching collection, and it is preserved. We preserved 5 volumes, a complete collection. The archives of this company in 2007, when the company was shut down, after the initiative of one of the owners of the company, rescued this, and all the archive is in a store in the house, dating back to the 19th century. But the rest of the archive was doomed to destruction, and it was sent to a company managing paper. But that company, but we were able to preserve, and we were able to access to a very important photographic archive, because the material they used for the review, the magazine, so all the works, all the annotations, all the papers are included in a collection which is extremely interesting. Next slide. The next company is TESA. TESA is a company, is a factory established in 1934. You can see a central image of what it was, with a modern architecture for that period in time. So they were using zenithal light, and it was very innovative for that time because they had anti-fire systems, etc. So this company that was established in 1934 was closed in 1994. The 90s were a key moment for the destruction of companies in Behar. The delocalization and the competition of the eastern market will make them collapse after going some dismissal processes, etc. Some of the processes have been rather violent. So, concretely, TESA, 400 workers, this company, so they started the dismissal process. And for us, that meant a complete abandonment. So the factory was looted. Machines were completely scattered, but the offices and the archives were complete since 1934. So it was violated, and so after that, you can see that on the picture, everything was on the floor, everything had been burned down, etc. It was administrative documentation, accounting documentations, but also we saw that in many rooms, and I could sneak in without violating anything, it was full of technical information, production, etc. So all that was completely destroyed, completely swept away. Another company, Fábrica Gutiérrez. So they worked with tissues, and this company dates back to 1592 with the promotion of paintings for tissues and dyeing. The This is one of the oldest one in Spain. After many years and after the exploitation of the Duke's house, it was bought by Gutierrez family, and for 125 years they exploited the company. I was able to see the complete archive. This company, after some bankruptcy procedures, etc., administration procedures, etc., and after collective dismissal actions, etc., many of the archives and the machinery were a little in bad situation. So after a quick sale, a constructing company bought it for an urban development, 20,000 square kilometers. So everything disappeared. The building, it was an industrial complex that maintained buildings dating back to the Duke's house. No protection was implemented by the government or by the regional government. This picture that I wanted to show to you is very significant due to the fact that this is a lab furniture. A lab furniture with many archive files with indications of the paintings for each customer. So this gives us information about the way they used ink to dye, and when they started to mix wool with synthetic fibers, etc. Well, all this disappeared. This is another dyeing or painting company that was established in 1947, and it was closed in 1995. Matinsa is the name of the company. Same thing happened to them. This files cabinets were very important. I was related to the owner of this company before buying them, but before buying it, selling it, I'm terribly sorry. So I asked them to take pictures of that, and they gave me some blueprints, etc. But the problem was that there was a great deal of secrecy about the archive, and the furnaces of the company, a great part of the archives were burned. This company you see on the picture is let's say, an outstanding factory in Behar. You can see on the picture, on this aerial picture, of this wood transformation company. This company was established in 1915, and it ended operation in 1999 because they adapted to the Franco period transformation period or rules. They joined to TESA, a group of companies. So TESA centralized all industrial processes. So these factories had machines removed and they disappeared. The status of this picture you can see on the screen, it's clearly abandoned. Part of the archive of this company is clearly disappearing. I have no longer time, so I'm going to finish. So this is a clear image of how the archive was destroyed. So we need to stop a little bit here. I'm going to show you the next slides for you to see other factories. But the images I wanted to show you, together with the regional archives we collected, happened precisely there. I think this could be a good time for us to show you oral archives. So all these questions could be developed further in upcoming congresses, because there are so many things we can discuss about this. So it is extremely important to document, to film, and to really collect the warmth of people. So these factories we are talking about, we could film them while they were in operation. Many of them are already closed. A lot of people passed away, especially or many people we can see in the audiovisual production. This factory, this is the main documentary of the project, Industries with Soul.
De contrato nos empezaron a enseñar que hacían los ganchos y tenemos estos que eran hechos por
So we used these tools for these hooks, and this is what the workers used to use. I have two hooks, and I also have a box of blades. We collected memories of each arts and crafts, and we collected also memories from the factories. So we need to use knee pads because the brake was really strong. So you could take the thread with a ring and then you stick it because there was a big reel that was going round and round. So after many years, you can see women keeping the same gestures. So this man talks about the memories of his job. So we have oral archives of all the sections. So there were 110 people working there. It was very warm inside the factory. So this is the factory that we could see before on the picture. So this one here.
Pasé, vamos, mi infancia aquí. Había un
I spent my childhood here. We had a yoke here, and the other one was there. This anvil was here, and then the other anvil was there. So the master hammered this, and then you had to hit where the master told you to hit. And then we moved to the other anvil. And then we had to whistle, but we couldn't even whistle. I didn't even want to go down, but the thing is that there was a strong smell, and the wool produced a strange, odd smell. So I didn't like to go down here. These columns were created without any kind of yielding. When I joined the company, all this was already up and running. There was a washing facility here, and there was another one. So, and this is where the drying thing was there.
Que tenía mariposillas por el estómago.
So we had to take parts of the oral archives. We have a lot of reels. So we mixed a little bit the dialogues of people and what they told us.
Se hizo para unir formadora con Ricasco. Esta es la parte de transformadora de lanas.
This is the wool transformation section. We had the threading here. This is one of the biggest factories, the textile factories in Behar. But they had their own workshop, 300 square meters or more. So as you can see, this is where the spinning machine was, the spinning section. So trucks came in here, they turned around, they loaded everything here. Those short Pegaso trucks. So there's a moment they made us laugh a lot with the stories he told, but then all of a sudden he said, I like to remember things, but sometimes going through memories, things hurt. So my colleague says that we need to conclude. I wanted to show this to you. This is what when we showed the project in Hervás, and at that moment we decided to come up with a documentary, audiovisual documentary with women from Hervás. We had some images to show to you, but we will have to leave this for the next Congress. So we are in connection with other territories. We are also linked with other countries in order to continue knotting voices, let's say, from people coming from other territories and countries. And of course, we will have to hold an international congress in the town. The audiovisual documentary of the textile production in Hervás is still pending editing. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you go to our website, anudandotextil.org, and the Tierra Voz channels, we will be more than happy to answer to any question you might have, and we will be more than happy to link together. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Os agradezco mucho que...
Thank you very much. I really thank you for sticking to time. I'm really sorry that you cannot speak longer, but this is how things are organized. So we're looking forward to knowing more things about your topic. So our next presentation is a very interesting initiative. We have Alberto Nanclares. The title is Town as an Archive, Recovering Signs of Disappeared Shops. We have Alberto Nanclares from Paco Graco Association. Since 2017, the association collects signs from shops that are closing in Madrid, and it's rescuing them from disappearing, not just very old signs from really old shops. They recover different signs with different materials. Paco Graco is an alive archive of signs that are still on our streets, and also those who have been given by people or taken from containers. It's a growing family. There's Jacobo García, Alberto Nanclares, Mercedes Moral, Basura Manzuloark, and I'm going to give him the floor so that he can explain his work. Hello, thank you for coming. I'll try to stick to time. But then there are people from Pablo Bejar, and I'm in Madrid. I'm available. You have my phone on the screen, my Instagram, and people call me all the time. So I'll just speak for 10 minutes. Basically, we rescue signs from shops that close. And we enjoy the fact that many different people are interested by commercial graphic heritage. So we have very different people around us enjoying this, and we cover a wide field of knowledge. We're not document specialists, we're artists, performers, installers, architects, urban activists. It's not that we're trying to find a story, we are trying to find stories. We have 350 items that we've rescued with our hands. They're stored in warehouses that people lend to us. Now we have collapse because we're getting kicked out of all of our warehouses. We're trying to negotiate with a DIF, the railway manager that's going to rent one of their warehouses. We've organized exhibitions that were very successful, hundreds of visitors. I liked your experience. You know how to make films, and your films are touching. I think that we need to use the tools that we're familiar with. We are familiar with exhibitions because two of our members design and assemble and organize exhibitions. We can get up there with our systems, our security systems, our scaffolding. We don't need to hire anyone, so we're really free when we design exhibitions. But the thing we like most is gathering people. We're always organizing suppers, breakfast, meetings, beers, wines, etc. Because in this table you can see what we like, which is people from different ages, backgrounds, people that make cities without even bothering to check who they are. Towns are archives, cities are archives. You need to read it as such. We have these pictures by Antonio Lopez. This is from a picture from 1915 Madrid. These are images that we have in our brain. No one needs to show this to us. We can enjoy them. And Madrid has lost a lot. It has been destroyed, sometimes on purpose and other times without even realizing. The Real Cinema was bombed during the war. It was rebuilt like this. It was really ugly, and it was destroyed again recently. And no one was responsible for the destruction. It's like what you said about Bejar. This is part of Spain's history, the world's history. It disappears, and no one is accountable. We don't want destructors to pay, but we want people to be aware of how important this is. This is Real Cinema turned to nothing, and it's become something horrible. This hotel, which is horrible. And we say that it should be some sort of souvenir of what Real Cinema was, and that the fact that it was bombed, because otherwise that will be lost. My son needs to know about this. There are more important works than ours, such as this dissertation by Santiago Cifuentes, which is great, and it shows that there are other cities below the one that we rescued. This is the city of the Second Republic. You recognize Chicote was still open, and the signs that we rescue are just some, not all of them, not even the best ones, but it's ours. They're ours. Our guide is Richard Nickel, this guy from Chicago, Illinois, who rescued architectural details of Lee Sullivan, a very important figure of American architecture. When Chicago started to destroy its heritage from the beginning of the 20th century to build other buildings, some of them are great, others not really, this guy on his own recovered these treasures. He also demonstrated, I'm sure you're familiar with this picture, some of the most important theaters of the 20th century were destroyed. And he started to take pictures, and at some point he rescues the heritage, and at some point the Chicago stock market collapsed on him and he died. He became a martyr in the Art Institute of Illinois in Chicago. There's a room with his name, Rachel Nicken room, with some pieces of Louis Sullivan. It was the great heritage saved by a private individual who died in the process. And this is what we started to do. We bothered the workers that were reforming this shop in La Latina. I wasn't interested. We just went there and we said, okay, please keep the marble on the facade. It's just attention to things. And after staying the whole morning with them, they threw the signs away. And I had been talking to them for the whole morning, and they were working so fast and they were in a hurry and they didn't care. And this person saw, he had grown up in front of that shop and he saw his life disappear before him. We started with La Latina, our neighborhood, and then we went to other neighborhoods in the periphery of Madrid where there's a different notion of heritage. In particular, people who own shops. This is the owner of this shop, and we want to establish a link between the old owner and the new owner. In this shop, they were forced to repaint the facade they were going to destroy, so they hired an artist to reproduce this. I understand that reproducing heritage is completely different, but the city as an archive, we don't need the actual item to be there. It's rather the idea. You can rewrite it again. So this ice cream shop, the owner is our friend. We cannot punish her for changing the commercial tradition because we prefer to eat ice cream today than buying a tap, which is what they used to do. Let's be honest. But we celebrate that they had sensitivity and also the obligation not to erase everything that it was. The old Manila and the new Manila, they can live together because we want a contemporary Manila too. We have different habits. We're lucky because in Google Maps we have the history of the past 18 years, street by street. These are videos that show how the streets are transforming, and we have a very detailed archive, meter by meter, of the past 17 years. It's not 100 years, but we have Penalba Shoe Shop in Peth Strip, which is one of the most representative things of how you can erase the memory and the history of a city. This is today. This is the 50s, 60s, 70s. It's disappeared, that corner. There's a convent. Part of the corners were transformed into shops, and now they've been rebuilt as if they've never existed. I think it's quite representative. It shows the fact that shops have no heritage value. Everyone says, okay, you need to recover the convent. I am a lay person. I'm against religion. And I say, okay, why is a convent more important than a shoe shop? Can you explain this to me? You cannot explain that to me because it's pure ideology. There are signs, such as this one, Sarah, this was a homage or a steal or a copy of Hard Rock Cafe, that international rock project. But then we've learned that it was a very important sign, an important shop designed by Mr. Zuazo and his colleagues in the 30s. It was a symbol of Republican cafeterias. It became an important place during the transition because journalists used to gather there. So we rescued the sign because a worker had previously rescued it. He kept it because he was sure that someone was going to be interested. He was born in Cochabamba, a wonderful Bolivia, a wonderful person that had no idea what Zara was, and he kept it because he said, this has some value. And this is the important thing for us, the idea of value. To build this idea of value collectively. It's not that we have to say, we need to protect this heritage because it has value. I'm saying this. No, people mobilize because they see the value in it. There are documents that support this. This is the architecture journal published in Madrid for decades, 1930, and you see the original Sahara cafeteria. So we merge this popular idea of heritage, a worker who says, okay, I'm going to keep this because I don't think this should be broken, with this the support that we have in architecture schools, library, these two worlds merge together because usually they're completely separated. We're working in the document field that we had left aside, this to work in the two dimensions at the same time. The popular dimension, we're familiar with it. We dismantle shops. We get covered in dust. We have dust even in our brains. We need to combine this with people such as Pepe, the owner of a shop, who couldn't care less about his shop. She said, okay, you can burn it if you want to. And we've been storing his boxes with electronic devices from different decades, 200 boxes from Pepe. We need to move them around through our warehouses. We don't want to be heroes like Richard Nico, who died when the stock market collapsed on him. We need to combine documents and items. We have many people in these projects, friends that we've made, and friends such as this family. They gave us the sign of the family. They've become friends. Rojavi, he was our friend, and now he is part of the project. So he calls us, okay, I have a sign, come pick it up. And then when we prepare our exhibitions, we have very different people, very modern people, graphic artists, advertisers, art directors that are super interested in this, and old people that like this. We created our association in 2019. Now we have 42 nodes in different cities, and we're really proud of this. And this is the last thing I'll explain. Many people have joined this project in their cities. In Zaragoza, they have a very advanced project. Seville, Jaén, in Asturias, we have nothing. For example, there's a node that hasn't quite started because there's a difference between taking pictures and taking a screwdriver and trying to take the signs off. This is a real story. We were told there's a sign in San Fernando de Henares in a restaurant. We call the restaurant, and this person, there was a whole chain of calls, and we called the restaurant, and the waiter took the sign and brought it in the bar. And I said, okay, why are people so wonderful? And I want to pick it up the next day. And he was so proud of his contribution. We are doing this on our own. We put things in any way we can. We put signs everywhere, lifts, boots, and this heroic action of rescuing a sign from a cafeteria in a neighborhood. People who are attached to it are very happy about it. People really have fun doing this. It's become some sort of a hobby. Let's find signs. And I think it's interesting to launch this message. We have a huge hall in Bejar. It's more complicated, but everyone can be involved in protecting heritage. This is an activity that can involve many people. You could think that everyone is interested, although there are people like Pepe who couldn't care less about his heritage. He said, you can burn my shop if you want. So this difference between public interest and private interest, I think it's interesting to discuss this in this type of fora and also in the future, that heritage is not an imposition, but rather an invitation, so that the heritage owners themselves feel not forced, but invited to protect it. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Alberto. Gracias por la...
Thank you. I think in all cases, one of the threads is passion, the passion of those working in the project. Is that so, Alberto? Please come with me while we prepare our third presentation. I wanted to say a couple of things. One for Alberto and Zara. Zara is a reference cafeteria in Madrid during the Republic, and Mr. Ortega said he used to have his coffee there every day because it was next to the magazine that he worked in. Alberto said it's the memory of the city, and the memory of the city is our memory. Our third presentation in this panel on social initiatives is related to Poblenou, a work on the historic archive of Poblenou. It's an association of volunteers interested in preserving historic heritage of this neighborhood in Barcelona. They started their activities in 1976, more than 300 members. They are headquartered in Barcelona. We have Jordi Fosses, chairman, and Oreste Sanchez, vice president of the archive. Thank you very much. Good morning. I would like to thank you for inviting us to this conference. And second, we would like to apologize. We are amateurs. We are here as amateurs, but we'll try to protect our honor. I'll try to explain what Poblenou's historic archive is. We're going to do it through a company called Cangirona, a metal industry, and it's going to be our script. We're going to show you some slides with texts. I think you can read them yourselves, and I'm going to explain the images. First of all, what's the archive? To give you an idea, it's a private association, a non-profit. What does it mean? We are an NGO of history. This is what we are. The first image that you see is a map from the end of the 19th century. There are industries around, no shops, no restaurants, all industries. It's what we had in our neighborhood. There's no Gothic art, no Renaissance, no Baroque, not even modernism. What's our heritage? Well, factories. Cangirona would be this black stain here. So this is a blueprint of Candidona's factory, 1973, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very interesting blueprint. Sometimes documents have a soul, and this one has one. Sometimes the history of a document is more important than the document itself. It's not the case. This document is a very important one. In 1992, the company closed, and its documents were lost. The workers saved two trucks full of documents. They took this to the National Archive of Catalonia, which is the best place to protect documents. This was back in 92. We're in 2025. If you go to the National Archive of Catalonia, you won't be able to see the documents yet. They're not interested. They're interested about the Middle Ages, and that's about it. 19th and 20th centuries. They struggle to recognize that's part of the history. So the history of this document, when the company closed, this was thrown away. And this is something I learned later. It appeared in a car park. It was wet. It was an original blueprint. It had colors. The person that found it was an Italian man, and he thought it was important, picked it up, and took it with him to Italy. He had it with him in Italy for many years, and one day he decided to come back to Barcelona. He came by bike. He walked around all archives in Barcelona, the Archive Association, the City Archive, and no one wanted it until he reached us, last resource. And it's a wonderful document. It shows how the machines were installed, how the company worked, and after a lot of work, it took us 2 years to have him give it to us, and restoring it has cost €400 because things cost money. It's hung on a wall like a jewel, but it's important to know how a document reaches you. So this is an image from the factory. It's next to the train. The factory covered 17 hectares, but 17 football pitches, to give you an idea. It had it had many workers, and large companies are overvalued, and I'll explain myself. Large companies are great, but we cannot forget everything that they generate. Around them, there are workshops and different shops, and keeping the documents of these elements is as important, even more important than keeping the documents of the large companies, because one cannot be explained without the others, and people struggle to understand this. This is a postcard published by the company for advertising purposes. So 1970, people have talked about the crisis, companies closing. This is a picture. I feel some sort of nostalgia, and I like it. I like to go back to the past. I don't know if you can see the sign, the banner. It's important because it says CNT, UGT, Comisiones Obreras. Three Spanish trade unions. They're together. Sometimes you need to remember history, but it's important because of another thing. In the 70s, there were workers. Do we have workers today? Now we have employees. Things have changed. And this is what documents are for. It was a time of fight, misery, companies closed. With Beja, we fight with them. We are the Catalan Manchester. We fight with you. You have to bear in mind that the world is a very small place and we are very similar everywhere. Now we have an analog moment. We explain what we do: photography, blueprint, signs. And if you see here, since 2000, we're publishing a yearly magazine. So this is the analog moment. This is our magazine. This is what you see there, and this is what you're going to see if you go today. It's quite different. This is history. This is our current history. We cannot forget that. This is great, but let's never forget that things evolve. And this will happen. And this will become the past. And it has to be documented. The same way we documented this part, we need to document this part too. And I'm explaining this because we're a bit lazy. It's one magazine a year, but we have 26 editions, so 26 years doing something. And when you're volunteering, it's not easy. The first one is super easy, the second two, the third one is complicated, and after 26, you can imagine. I'm going to give the floor to Orestes. He's going to explain how we organize ourselves, what we do. This is a picture that I wanted to show here because it symbolizes the closing of companies. It's a closed fence, and there's a tower behind it. It's a water reservoir, which is where our headquarters are, our seat. It's a public building. We have a concession to be able to be there for 15 years. How long was it? I think it was 20. Well, we're towards the end of the period, so any day we could be kicked off. Sorry, kicked out. I'm going to ask you a question, but, well, I'd rather ask it at the end. Thank you, Jordi. Thank you for having me. I wanted to explain what we're doing now to take this step from analog to digital. I joined the archive in 2005, and the first thing I did was, all these pictures that you have in a box, why can't people see them differently? So we created a photography website, and we've been having the same software since 2005, and it still works. I would like to invite you to check the archive website to see the photographies. We have digitalized around 20,000 pictures. The collection is 24,000. And something Jordi has said, current times. How do we make sure that we document today? We're adding pictures from 2024, even 2025 to the archive. Why? Because in a few years' time, it will be necessary to remember that. When the new building was built, when a shop has been demolished, or a new area has been opened in the neighborhood. We've been working in a chimney project since 2018. One of the symbols in the sign is chimneys. 2 volunteers came to the archive in 2018. They said that they wanted to do a project with the 28 chimneys that were still standing in Pobleno. It was a very ambitious project. They wanted to create a geographic system just for that. Well, we managed to do this. We've created a small system of geographic information. For those where we didn't have any old maps or maps provided by public institutions, we've digitalized things and we've worked on this. This is the water channel in Barcelona that provided water to this territory in a neighborhood. And we've drawn it on the current map of Barcelona. They needed to be visited. In the past, people needed to visit different archives, and with this, we're trying to create new research tools so that everything is easier. We're still working on this. Signs. We're digitalizing documents, adding them to an access-based catalog, Atom. Some of you have mentioned this, and we're still working on this. I would like to refer to the origin of documents. This is an ID from a Macosa worker with data from this worker. Documents come from companies themselves. It's 1% because we didn't want to write 0. The city archive, district archive, neighborhood associations, but neighbors, 94%. What's the archive? The archive is the neighbors. It's bottom up. We work with the neighbors. Do we have all the IDs from Macosa's workers? No, we have those which have arrived to us, which have reached it. We have a sufficient number to explain history. Sometimes you don't need to have everything. Sometimes you just need to have some things and being able to put them in order and taking a look at it. Having everything doesn't mean that you can do a great job unless you want to recover the memory of workers in Argentina that suffered retaliations, and you need labor contracts, etc. And as you can see here, out of the 94%, 75% were given by former workers, because this is what we had in our neighborhood. We had workers. We still have workers. As we've seen in Béjar, they have videos that show their past, their history, the way they worked, and it's what we have in our neighborhood.
Some other things we have, he went through mapping very quickly, but we don't have time to explain to you everything. So we incorporated in mapping aerial pictures and photo blueprints for us to understand what the neighbors is all about. So on the top right part of the picture that you cannot see, this is the before the Olympics Barcelona area. So you can see the beach there, and that was a reservoir. That was a landfill. So that was a landfill that included all the debris and all everything that could was wasted in the city, something that was negative was used for the beach, to create a beach. So something negative became very positive. So people say that when you go to the beach in Barcelona, if you see someone who doesn't bathe, is because this person comes from Poblano, because we know what the water quality was about. But you can go and take a bath there and take a swim there, because there's no problem. Other things we do, some exhibitions. This is a poster of the headquarters of Poblano Archive. So this is a metal work industry with iron for trains, for railroads, and they collaborated with a maritime company at Barceloneta. So this is a merger or a joint venture of many companies. And the tower that you can see in the picture is our headquarters, actually. The tower was used by Camtirana, that was a water company, and it was used to cold laminated iron. So they used water to cool metalwork. But the tower is still there after 140 years of history. Just a comment, the headquarters is not up there. There's a building downstairs, and we don't need to walk up 300 stairs or steps up. We only have 5 minutes. 3 minutes, actually, we'll go up. So if you climb up the tower, this is what you are going to see. This is an aerial picture. So here is the tower and this neighborhood that were erected in this land. So you can reach the sea. If you don't know Barcelona, you can see this now. And then the Forum of Cultures, that is there, and then this house. So this is the situation of the area now. I invite you next year, if you like it. We will celebrate our 50th anniversary, so it's a long time for an institution like ours. So we turn 50 years, so I invite you all to come and visit. And obviously, when you will leave, you will not have ham, but at least you will be able to have a wonderful, delicious meal at the restaurant. So you will be more than welcome. So let's continue. These are former employees of Macosa Camchirona. This picture was taken in 2003 when a plaque was opened paying homage to the workers of the tower. So as you continue, documenting is something we do on a daily basis. So we have been documenting events since the beginning. So the history is a long history. And just to conclude now, I explained to you many things. If you didn't listen to me, it's okay, no problem. If you didn't understand anything, it's okay. But I wanted to explain to you something which is very important for us. Documentation is used for what? It's used to know the past. We all agree on that, right? So if we know the past well, we know the present well. We can explain present based on documentation, but we can make a step forward. History is never here. We don't wait for history. So history is never there. So we need to put value on what we do in terms of documentation to understand present. If we're not able to predict the future, what do we have to do? We need to try to tell what is going to happen with what we have now. Everybody knows when the birth rate is going to go up and down. Everybody knows the sea level when it goes up and down. But nobody can say what is going to happen in history, because the thing is that if we make decisions, our knowledge-based decisions, the situation will be best and we will save money. Knowing history and applying history, the result is it going to be a very good result from an economic point of view. This is the only takeaway I wanted to share with you, at least this only takeaway. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias.
So thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. The next topic, I'm not going to go up on the stage now. We will project something. The memory of workers of Tabacalera, women workers in Madrid and Alicante. First, we are going to show the video. So I'm going to introduce to you Cigarreras. Cigarreras is an audiovisual creation project, historical memory project between the transition and the closing of the factory in the year 2000, and they interviewed women workers, and the project tells the experiences of invisible women, claiming the cultural and social role of these women that marked the history of Madrid. Cigarreras Doc is a space of collective memory. So we are going to see the film first, and then we will have the creator of the project, David Azo, member of Cigarreras, and we are going to have three Cigarreras members: María García Huertas from Madrid, Sui Dares, Alicante, and María Isabel Tormo Ábalos from Alicante. They will come up on stage after the viewing of the clip.
Yo entré a trabajar en Tabacalera en el año 1976. Toda mi familia se dedicó a ser entre cigarreros, cigarreras, mecánicos y porteros. Empezó con mi bisabuela y terminé yo, porque la fábrica ya la cerraron.
So I joined when I was young, and the entire family worked at Tabacalera making cigarettes. The father of my great-grandmother started making cigars, and then my father joined, then I joined, then cousins also, and my father's brother worked there. Each one of us gave our life to the factory. We started working at 6, not 1 minute later. So we heard the whistle at 6, and everybody had to be at the workshop dressed with our uniforms. It was not a nice job. It was not a fun job. It was not a healthy job. It was not healthy at all. And this is what we had to do. That was the only thing we had. We believed that was normal. When Tabacalera was closed, it was a bad situation for me. there was a negotiation with the committee. We voted, national delegates voted, and they promised that if we signed the closing of certain factories, we could help to save other factories. I didn't agree with that. I voted against. So the first one to fall was Madrid in 2000. On May 31st, 2000 is when the factory was closed, and then one after the other collapsed.
Todas viven.
Practically all of them live near the factory, or they try to live nearby. And the census of female workers indicate that most of them were born in Madrid. And coming from the area, this craft was inherited from daughters to mothers to daughters. I'm sorry. So, in terms of age, since they start working, they are 8, 9 years old, and they continued working until they couldn't more. Now, as to the economic profile, most of them are alone due to different circumstances. Some of them are widows, others don't have a partner, and some of them were the head of the family, meaning the main income provider. So the neighborhood lavapiés and the embajadores area and the surroundings of the factory comprises a great deal of female. So the inhabitants are mostly women rather than men. So it's a generalized misery situation, but women and cigar making women are very precarious, related precisely to what we would call today family burden, taking care of kids mainly. So this makes the neighborhood to have a series of institutions related to charity and working precisely with the female. The most important organization in the neighborhood is called La Inclusa.
Pues ser hombre o
Being a man or being a woman in a factory is completely different. They had some rights that women didn't. Men had rights that women didn't. In the past, we didn't. We were not important at all. We had to work, and that was all. That was completely different. If machines didn't spoil or didn't break, they didn't have to come closer to machines for any reason, and they didn't put their hands on that at all. If a machine broke, they went there to repair, and then you could continue as a woman with your tasks. So they spent their time smoking or listening to the radio. They had small radios there to listen to the radio, so their lives were completely different. They didn't they barely worked, and you as a woman had to work a lot. Being a man was being God. Being a woman was being nothing, their assistant. In time, as time went by, and the conditions and the life of cigar makers, women cigar makers, improved. We had more rights. We were many, actually. That was one of the reasons. Something typical among women cigar makers in Spain is Carmen, one of the romantic French women with a gypsy cigar maker in southern Spain, with a certain reputation, let's put it this way. So this book was well spread, and this book became famous with Bizet's opera. So that opera, and the topic was a cliche that has been reinterpreted, presenting and showing women and cigar makers following the stereotype of a femme fatale. But when you see what a woman cigar maker is in real time, the type of femininity they have is a completely dissident one, not based on a physical attraction, but on a class that was strong. They are pioneer in the workers' movement in Spain, and these women own the public space, they own the political space, and we can even say that they claim for what is theirs. Cigar makers had some work claims aimed at improving working conditions, improving salary conditions, and at the beginning they fought for issues that were very specific to them because they were women. They were women and they had to take care of their family as well, so they didn't have the same conditions of male workers. So I don't know if women are stronger, but women are the head of a family. You bear the burden of a family on your shoulders. Women are the real pillar of society. We are workers and mothers, and we have many things to do. And sometimes men don't let us do something. If you're a worker, you cannot be a mother. If you're a mother, you cannot be a worker because you're going to be a problematic worker. So, and even more in the case of a factory. But we had to fight for that. They had to fight for their position to be considered mothers and workers.
Las cigarreras fuimos...
Cigar makers went through repression, especially after the Civil War, because Falange members, when they saw that women were left-wing, they cut our hair and they gave us oil to drink to give example of what we shouldn't be, meaning left-wing. There was a time since 1939 until 1977 or 78. It's like we were dead. There was nothing. Everything was like dead. Nobody protested. Because there was a Falange member, when they became a little brave, he would take out his pistol and shot two shots in the air. So they were really afraid. Until 1975, the worker movement was a little silent. Clandestine resistance were there, but we were there. But no women was part of this rebellious groups. They were really afraid. They were really afraid of being jailed, and these years were really dark years. In 1976, when I joined the tobacco making company, workers started to organize with trade unions to fight for the rights we didn't have, rights we are losing in these times. Cigar makers were women, workers, mothers, and fighters. This is what female cigar makers were.
Iba la cigarrera, lerelere, iba la cigarrera, lerelere. Lleva un chiquillo, leré, lleva un chiquillo, leré, lleva un chiquillo, lerelere, lerelere. Lleva un chiquillo. El chico le pregunta, lerelere, el chico le pregunta, lerelere. ¿Quién fue mi padre, leré? ¿Quién fue mi padre, leré? ¿Quién fue mi padre, leré, 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 leré? ¿Quién fue mi padre? La madre le contesta, leré, leré. La madre le contesta, leré, leré. Fue un miliciano, leré, fue un miliciano, leré, fue un miliciano, leré, 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 leré. Fue un miliciano. El chico le pregunta, leré, leré. El chico le pregunta, leré, leré. ¿Qué fue primero, leré? ¿Qué fue primero, leré? ¿Qué fue primero, leré, 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 leré? ¿Qué fue primero? La madre le contesta, leré, leré. La madre le contesta, leré, leré. Fue un artillero, leré, fue un artillero, leré, fue un artillero, leré, 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 leré. Fue un artillero. Y el chico le contesta, leré, leré. Y el chico le contesta, leré, leré. Cuando sea grande, leré, cuando sea grande, leré, cuando sea grande, leré, leré, leré.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations, David. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for being here for this very moving oral memory. So, first of all, I'm going to introduce to David, social mediator, studied at the University of Complutense University of Madrid, social work. His professional track record has always been related to community intervention, social rights, and cooperativism. In 2017, he started working in the audiovisual field at the Lens schools, where he produced the first piece on cigar makers. That was the origin of this project, and he continues to work on that and coordinates in order to rescue silenced voices. I'm going to introduce to you Maria Magdalena García Huerta now, cigar maker from Madrid. Maria Magdalena was born in Vallecas. Congratulations. She started working at the tobacco making factory when she was 18. She comes from a worker's family. One of her grandfathers was in mat houses during World War II. So she has always shown trade union support, and after the Embajadores factory, she was transferred to Tres Cantos and then to Alicante, where she continued working until retirement. She's the main role of the first part of the project we could see. So thank you for her generosity to share some personal and work experiences, and they paved the way to recuperate the voice of female cigar makers in Madrid to build this country. Then we have Maribel Tormo. Maribel is a cigar maker from Alicante. She started her academic studies, and she studied international secretariat as well. So she started working at a very important law firm, and that was important for her background. In 1971, she joined the factory, and she started as a learner, and she knew in depth the productive process from the beginning to the end. So her abilities allowed her to move upwards within the chain of the company, and then she joined the administration in Alicante, and then she was top management secretary, and she's characterized by professionalism and commitment. And then at the other edge of the table, Sol Llorens from Alicante. She defines herself, and this is very interesting for her to use it, as a brave, working, and committed woman. She represents the spirit of many women that, with determination and spirit, have paved the way for future generations, and this can be applied to the three people who accompany us. She studied administration, secretariat, and she started working at 16 in Alicante, and she joined the cleaning team. Her constant desire to move forward, she started working in quality and then in the administration. Since the legalization of trade unions, Asunción is part of the Works Council representing the UGT, and she firmly defends labor rights, and she's always been a leader. Her constant fight for equal opportunities and the right of female workers made of her a reference point within and outside the factory. Her commitment to social justice and progress led her to local politics, and she continued being a public servant. And she was the mayor of Achamel for 12 years until 2011. And she was the first time to be the mayor in the municipality. During her mandate, she proposed advances of infrastructure, public health, and public service, focused on citizens and education for social cohesion and equal opportunities. Asunción is also a fighter, as the two other women who accompany her, devoted her life to work and transform people. From the factory to the town hall, her experience is an inspiration as a tool for change, for equal opportunities. So with this introduction, I can move aside. It's impressive to have these three people who have done this job for a long time. A historical reference, actually, when they told us their experience, and I regret that no many young people are in this room. So there is a disconnection in this regard, because they need to understand what has been done in the past for young people to understand what they are now. So David, you take the floor first and explain us the project.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. I'll try to be brief, first of all, because we have three people that have more interesting things to say since they're together. This is a great opportunity. And they shared the story of their lives in different places. And also, you've said half of the things I was going to say. We are a project. The idea behind the project is some sort of coincidence. I came from Barcelona to live in Madrid, and I did a master's degree in cultural management and a video training. During my master's degree, I had to analyze different cultural institutions, one of them Madrid Cigar Factory. And in the video training, I had to create a film. So while I was doing my research on this cigar factory, I found the story of cigar makers, female cigar makers. And I thought it was interesting that at the center of Madrid, no one knew exactly what the cigar factory was. You ask around, people think that because of the name, well, it has something to do with tobacco. And I asked around, okay, do you know that there were cigar makers here? No one knew. My mother didn't know anything. My father said, okay, it rings a bell. And then I asked my friends, and no one knew anything. And I realized that there was a void, such a huge building in the middle of Madrid, where you go, because I used to go there to visit exhibitions. It was a social and cultural center. No one knew about its history and how important it is in the creation of the neighborhood around it. Everything has happened in the past 200 years. It was invisible. So later, I started to learn about its history. I discovered the history of cigar makers. A void in terms of history in the case of Madrid, because there are other factories that have worked better in their history, such as Seville, Cadiz, and San Sebastian. Work there was more thorough, but I was impressed to see that female cigar workers were never claimed from feminist movements or trade unions as reference figures. Worker movement were mainly male, I guess, with this idea from the UK. But these women created trade unions, although it wasn't something formal, but they were worker organizations, mutual support, grants for strikes, taking care of kids, getting nurseries for some in the factories for some sort of work-life balance, residences for the elderly when they were retired, healthcare, and strike practices such as getting naked. They started to organize this within the factories. And this story was not told. And I thought it was interesting. So I contacted Mari, and when we did the film, well, I had an initial idea, which was a very small thing, a very specific thing, and then I discovered that there's this long story with hidden things behind it that I wanted to tell. So we joined forces with three friends and a photographer who's also a friend of mine. I called him. It was 15 years since we last talked, and I said, okay, I have a proposal. We want a larger project, and we need a photographer because we only do video. So we started to work on that. Through Mari, we contacted more female cigar makers, and we developed a project. And I guess to those of us who are NGOs, we only lose money. And something very common too is that you want to do many things while you're in the project. We did some photographies at the factory. When we did the video, we could only access part of the factory. Then we managed to get all of the factory, and we found files and documents that were forgotten with the works. This has been lost. Also machinery. There was machinery, and I don't know what they did with them, but they were abandoned parts. And the project has grown organically. We collected oral testimonials, we've recorded them. The idea is to create a book with testimonials and pictures from the factory. These are our colleagues. And then we have Vicky, a journalist. We tried to rescue all the publications since the 19th century. In our website, we've collected the most important pieces of news because it shows the social dimension it had. These women were literally capable of stopping life in the neighborhood. There was a Romeo and Juliet story in the neighborhood, and they stopped the neighborhood because the families wanted to separate them. So they had a lot of power in the factory and the neighborhood. So the idea was create an archive for news, photographies, also IDs. They've given us some things. So the idea is collecting items because we had just a few things. When we started, we knew the women that speak there. This is a group of women that walks through Madrid. A book by an anthropologist, and a video by Comisión Sobre, that's the trade union. And we thought it was worth it exploring all of this. And our idea is doing something at the factory. We have some contacts, but the Ministry of Culture, which is in charge of managing the main part, the point of contact changes constantly. They don't have a clear idea about the project. We've had several meetings, but you have a meeting with someone and 2 years later, this person is not there anymore. They don't know what to do with the factory. So the whole process is complex. We have a proposal for an intervention at the neighborhood. Right now, there's only a sign this big in a color where you can barely read what it says. We would like to have something fixed. We've proposed to donate pictures, whatever they want. We have even an original code. I have it at home. And I said, okay, it should be hung somewhere, perhaps at the entrance of the factory with a plaque. So our idea is to work along those lines, trying to do things in the neighborhood with urban interventions mainly for memory. And at some point, we hope, within the factory itself. Mari, you have the floor. Whatever you want to share with us. My name is Maria Magdalena, but everyone calls me Mari. Thank you. When I joined Tabacalera, I had just turned 18. I turned 18 on the 6th of January, and it was the 2nd of February. I was just out of secondary school. My father said, there are free spots, free positions in Tabacalera, in the tobacco factory. Do you want to go there? And I said, yes. Well, I was super impressed. It was horrible. It was very cold. I went downstairs where tobacco was ground until it was taken to the machines. I was there for a few days and then I was taken to the workshop. Why? Because I was Paco's daughter. And Paco was an icon at the factory. He was the president of the company group, and I was. People were jealous of me. And other people were nice to me, but when trade unions were created, I joined UGT because Comisiones Obreras was not legal still, and I started to be respected. Why? Because I was really tough when reaching an agreement. I got up and I said, I don't accept this, and I left the table. And they said, okay, sit back again. When I joined the factory, I don't know about other factories, but in our factory, we didn't have toilet paper. We didn't have tissues. And this was in 1976. We cleaned ourselves with part of the reels that we used to work. There were showers, that's true, we had showers. But we were so dirty that even our eyes were full of dirt. When we started to clean the machines, I used a blue handkerchief because we weren't given masks. We only had a coat. They were huge because my mother turned one coat into two. So I was 18, 48 kilos. It was like a huge bag. From 2 coats, I got 4. I started to work in the workshop of Celtas Largos, a brand of cigarettes. And I was in a privileged position because I was Paco's daughter, but I've had cousins. I got married at 22, and when I turned 24, 25, I got the position of quality control. I earned that one. It wasn't given to me, just like that. And I did that until 2000, when the factory was closed and we were sent to Tres Cantos. I was working at the Research and Development Center. In Tres Cantos, we were doing fine. It was a smart building, very modern. What happened? We started to negotiate closing the factories. And I said that I didn't want to start that process because they were going to make everything disappear. And they said, no, we promise that if we close Madrid, La Coruña, San Sebastián, the other factories will be saved. They weren't saved, and we weren't saved. We were the first one. So I had to leave, and I had to go to Tres Cantos. And in 2007, they closed Tres Cantos because we've merged with CEITA, the French, and this center was taken to Strasbourg. I was given 3 options. Since I'm always contesting and not behaving, they said, okay, you go either to Alicante, Logroño, or out. And I said, I've been paying my house for 35 years, and I don't want to challenge that. And there was a very good person who was harassing me, and everyone knew about this. If you were harassed at work, no one cared. So I went to Alicante. I stayed 7 months, because the trade union told me, okay, go to Alicante, we'll bring you back. I was a good person at the trade union. I was a good worker. And in December, I was brought back to Madrid, and I worked until 2010 in UGT. Who started strikes in 77, 78 when the dictator died and the democracy started? It was women. Men were scared. I had nothing to lose. I was 18. I was not married. I didn't have kids. What could they do to me? Kick me out? Well, I was going to go back to my father and mother at home. So women started the strikes. We met. And then, when it was safer, that we weren't going to be kicked out for being members of trade unions, that's when men started. But at the beginning, it was women. Women started to move, to make claims, to ask for toilet paper, hot water, cleaning tools, rubber gloves. We didn't have rubber gloves to clean. We had to clean with our own hands with cold water. It's silly. Gloves. Well, we didn't have gloves. We needed to change ourselves. Girls will understand what I mean. We didn't have pockets in our coats. We need to ask the master, Master, can I go downstairs and change? And she said, yes. But we needed to ask for permission. That was the situation in Madrid. I cannot speak about other places. The situation in Madrid was complicated. Perhaps it was because it was Madrid, because Madrid was in the hands of the left, and it was really complicated to take it from the left. They had us in a really bad situation. We couldn't even complain because immediately we were punished for 3 days. A colleague of mine, they caught her smoking in the bathroom, and she was sanctioned for 15 days, no work and salary, because someone complained to the engineering and they opened the door. Today, if you open the door of women's bathroom, hell would break loose. But back then, we didn't know better, and our eyes were closed. So the door was open. They saw her smoking, and she was punished for 15 days. Next day, we all started to smoke because men were allowed to smoke, but women were not. So little by little, these pictures are related to this. We weren't allowed to smoke. There was an engineer, José Antonio Pérez Aranda. I don't know if he's dead or not. I hope he's in heaven. He was a really bad person, and he was always after us. You can't smoke, you can't smoke. Well, if he's smoking, why shouldn't I? Why can't I? But it's true, there was no discrimination. When we went out, I was given a packet of cigarettes. Thank you, María Magdalena García Huerta. Mari. Now we're going to hear from Maribel Tormo. Good morning. I'm a bit nervous, so if I make mistakes, I'm a cigar maker. I'm not a professional speaker, and I can assure you that we've put all of our heart into it. Our words don't come from the academia, but they are endearing. I would like to congratulate our colleagues, such as Uria, Roberta, Irina, and others. They've been great to all of us. They've taken care of us, they've encouraged us. And I would like to thank the previous speakers because they've taught us a lot. Yesterday we learned a lot from them, and everything's been very positive. And after this, well, Mari has explained what happened in her factory, and she picked a more modern time, the 70s. I'm going to speak about the history of how the factory in Alicante was built. Do you know that for decades, the economic heart of Alicante wasn't beating at the beach or the port, but at a tobacco factory. When we speak about Alicante, many people think about the sun, the beach, the bonfires. But there's part of a history which is not in the postcards, and yet it changed the lives of generations. Tobacco industry. For more than a century, tobacco factories were more than a workplace. There were spaces where friendships were created. Thousands of women found their economic independence, and social movements were created that little by little changed the rhythm of this city. Tobacco in Alicante was not just a product, was a driver of economy, a symbol of identity. Today, I would like to invite you to travel to this past and discover how tobacco industry transformed our city and why still today is a chapter still alive in our collective memory. In the 19th century, the sound of the sea brought something to Alicante, work and a new heartbeat. In 1801, the city received the tobacco factory, an important building that soon became the lung and heart of life in Alicante. There were thousands of female hands working, making cigarettes that went beyond the borders of the port. For many of them, this job was not just solidarity, it was independence, not a salary. It was a voice in a world where women didn't have one. The factory was a school of modernity. Little by little, machines arrived, but it never erased human footprint. Iron and smoke, tobacco smell, and shared stories through long working hours. So Alicante became a city of smoke and port, effort and resistance. Tobacco didn't just fill boxes and markets. It impacted collective memory. It became an essential chapter of Spanish industrial history. Under its roofs, you could hear constant rumor of women working with tobacco leaves. Their patient hands worked with precision. They were in charge of working with the leaves to give them a new life as a cigar or a cigarette. The right hand took useful things, left hand caressed fragile things. In this universe of pungent smells, children had a place. Children of cigarette workers, after school, they went there and joined the ritual. They helped to separate, classify, to distinguish perfect from imperfect leaves. With this simple learning, a legacy was handed on. Leaves had a silky texture. The destiny was being the second skin of a cigar. Other leaves were used for the inner part of the cigarette that you smoke on a daily basis. Women and children classified leaves and cigarettes were born. It wasn't just a job, it was an intimate process where each hand left a footprint in the smoke that others will light later. The tobacco factory wasn't just a production space, it was also a training center, a center for social progression. From the beginning, different initiatives were promoted to improve staff skills, aware that every technological innovation required qualified workers. With this aim, training courses were developed for new techniques, procedures. In 1973, with restructuring in the industry, new positions were created, new specializations, old workshops became other departments such as electricity maintenance, methods and times, mechanic, maintenance, quality control, and social section. The professionalization of this department allowed to modernize the factory itself, but also give workers wider future. In terms of access to internet education, this allowed different career paths, and many female workers used these opportunities to train as mechanographers, accountants, or administrative workers, which allowed them to work in offices and even pass state exam. I have an example, my colleague Suni. She passed the administrative exams and she became the mayor of her town, Mutramel, and she later became an MP from Alicante. I took an exam to become a secretary. I was a secretary for more than 20 years with 8 different people. This professional career never made me forget my origin and my identity. The shared soul of cigar maker, a symbol of effort, solidarity, and collective effort. These people show that the factory was an actual factor for social transformation. It modeled local economy, but it also dignified the life of female workers, providing them with educational tools to overcome labor barriers and project themselves to a different space of political and social participation. I would like to speak about something very important in our labor life: social and cultural improvements achieved through time thanks to the organization of workers and the commitment of institutions. It's not just about negotiating agreements that improve salaries. There are also advances in social areas. For example, creating a department called Social Department in charge of social activities. It was in charge of responding to support requests submitted by workers, amongst which study grants for themselves and their children, dental prosthesis, support for disabled relatives. And improvements weren't just economic. Sports and culture were promoted too. There was a company group with its own library, an open space where employees could read any type of book. They organized tournaments and activities. Entertainment activities such as football matches, tennis matches, chess, domino, or cards. They fostered integration and sharing. And workers created the tobacco choir, which was widely recognized. In 1992, it was presented in Vienna. This achievement showed not just artistic talent, but also highlighted the value of collective effort and the importance of giving space to cultural expression at work. So these advances prove that well-being of workers cannot be limited to salary. It has to cover health, education, sport, and culture. It's the only way to build a sound and actually and truly human work community. I would like to say that the tobacco factory in Alicante was more than a center to produce tobacco. It was an institution that through centuries catalyzed the modernization of the city, and it became a lab for social and labor experimentation. It was a school of fight, solidarity, and female empowerment. Cigar workers, with their endless effort and resilience and their amazing capacity of organization, brought food to their families, but also challenged social rules. Back then, they fought for their rights and they built a network of social support that was a pioneer in many aspects, things that we understand as a welfare state. Its history, it's a powerful reminder of how a group of working women in really negative condition in a context of deep inequalities can become a transforming strength that model the social and urban identity of Alicante. Their legacy is not just the building, which is a cultural center today, but workers' rights, human dignity, and gender equality, things we will continue to fight for. There are things that we take for granted, and we have a collective responsibility to keep this memory alive, disseminate the history, and recognize the critical contribution to building a more just society. The history of cigar makers in Alicante is a lesson of resilience, sorority, and the ability of human beings to transform their reality. It's a history that deserves to be told and remembered, not just an episode of the past, but as a source of inspiration for the present and the future. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to take any question you may want to ask.
I still have 1 second. Just let me tell you an anecdote. When women, the 1800 cigar makers that were illiterate, absolutely illiterate, but they made cigars very well. So there was like a sort of a competition for them to see who did the best one. So the people in Alicante, notaries, lawyers, engineers, requested cigars from them. When they gather in casinos, they would take out their cigar little pocket boxes, and they said, look at the cigars. They were made by the cigar makers. So that they made an earning out of it, and they would say, I make cigars for Dr. X, or I make cigars for the notary. Well, I make cigars for the port engineer. So there was a sort of a competition between them. There was no quality assurance department, but they knew who made the good cigar and who didn't. So that is the conclusion. Okay, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Let's now close this roundtable with Asuncion Llorens, and she has the floor. But let me tell something before. Maribel, you don't have to apologize when you explain something before academics. Most of the academics would love to speak as you spoke. Thank you very much. I was very nervous because I've never spoken. I have never spoken in front of so many people. I was very nervous. I've never taken the floor in public, but I've met wonderful people here. Yes, Maribel, we are all good people here. Very good people, actually. Some of the things cannot be bought. You can buy a bed, but not a dream. Being here at 73, speaking about the factory as a dream who came true. So thank you very much. Now, Asuncion, you have the floor. Yes, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. It's a privilege and it's an honor to share with my friend Maribel. We've met since we were young, when we were studying, and then when we worked at the Alicante tobacco making company. Key forgotten and inspiring chapter of the history of Alicante, the social impact and the extraordinary initiatives that emerged around the tobacco making company. Before continuing, part of our story was told by Maribel, but these days we've been talking about the heritage of industry, and I feel guilty about it, and I said this to Maribel yesterday. I feel guilty to see how we accepted young people from our generation when we had 12 factories, tobacco factories in Spain, plus all the selling points, all the companies that coexisted with us, with the factories. How have we accepted them to be in Morocco, in the third world, with cheap labor? I feel really guilty about it. Maribel says, no, you shouldn't, but I do, because we have had a dignified retirement, but we have never thought that this tobacco making company, there were 500 people working under a fixed contract only in Alicante. What is the legacy to our heirs, to our sons and daughters and neighbors of the city of Alicante? This is something, and now that we are talking about industrial heritage, this is something that should include our own personal heritage within companies. This is something to assess, because this is not something we take back. Of course, we cannot have cigarettes made by hand like the ones that my grandmother did for the civil guard, for the police officers, or for the priests. And I still have some of them, which are cherished memories to me, to better the life of our families. This is what grandmothers did, and that's hurtful to me. You know, I've been part of the political world, and I've always criticized. I'm not going to talk about which government, but I don't know what government accepted tobacco factories in Spain to be closed. When was that? Let me give you an example. My grandmother in the late 19th century, my grandmother, great-grandmother, were working at the tobacco factory, so they gave me a good heritage. They allowed Farias cigarettes from Alicante to move to another province, and if you can read on the internet the revolts and the protests this created, and they managed to have this Farias cigars not to leave, and they fought to achieve many things. So it's hurtful to me. It's hurtful to me not to leave the following generations the state of welfare that the tobacco company in all Spain produced. We have been working in this factory for over 2 centuries. I think during these 2 centuries, this institution was not only an industrial production center, but also a real cradle for social transformation, and a vital and essential driving engine for finances, and thousands of women known under the name cigarreras, cigar makers. This is where they forged their freedom, their financial freedom, the freedom to fight. As of today, a group of men and women is working in Alicante to come up with some bylaws and create an association of Alicante cigar makers to be heard at public institutions, because our voice is not heard. In Alicante, we have a factory, which is a real an emblem in the oldest part of the city, and after negotiations, we managed to have the city council to own the factory. A lot of money has been invested for its restoration, because It's an old building, and this old building has to be taken care of in order not to destroy all the architectural wonders that we have within. But we want something more. Cigar makers want something more. Men and women from the Alicante factory want this factory, want this building, which is a part of our cultural heritage, to show the living history of cigar makers in Alicante. We need to manage and get our history not to be swept away. The stories of cigar makers should continue to live with exhibitions, with videos, etc. This is why we are in the process of coming up with bylaws. The Alicante cigar makers were pioneers in female trade unionism in Spain. We were pioneers in Spain. At the beginning of the 20th century, they created some of the first and most powerful workers' associations in Alicante, and they paved the way for the Association of Female Workers, founded in 1916, and later the Tobacco Union. These are examples of their ability to organize, to debate, and to fight collectively for their rights. Their claims were clear, straightforward, and progressive for their time. As an example, let me tell you that they required 8-hour days of work. I'm talking about 1913, 1940, and they required an 8-hour per day job. We ended up with 7.5 hours. The government is negotiating now 7.5 hours of work per day. This is what they are discussing now, and we had already these hours back in those days. So union makes force, and I believe that that was our claim as workers at those times. So they used all the means at their disposition: strikes, protests, selling telegrams to the Ministry of Finance, to have their voice heard by the highest levels of the states. I was a witness personally of all this when I was a kid. My grandmother, who was also a cigar maker, actively participated in this movement, and this is what she told us back home when she was back home. Their fight was a fight for financial improvement, but also for the recognition of their of their dignity as workers and women, something that was denied by society. I don't have much time, but I would like to conclude and talk about the factory and the entire group. I'm proud to have been part of the Alicante Tobacco Company. I remember this so it's a cherishable moment. It was a cherishable moment to me. Then after I started working as a cleaning lady, then after the competitive examination, I started working in administration, and then I started working in politics, but I'm not going to talk about politics because we are here to talk about Tabacalera. Our group was a very important group for the city, and it was good life for us, really agreeable. There was a group, we had a social network, we had our fight, and we had the support there, and we had financial support. So we broke glass roof at the time. So part of this information of cigar makers in Alicante is in this book, and we are going to give this book to the Lita Foundation. So if you have questions for debate, feel free to ask. We will be more than happy to answer to the questions.
Un minuto.
Just 1 minute before the coffee break. So we moved from making cigars like this, that was very difficult, and then all of a sudden British machines were there, rapid, because they were really rapid. So more protection. So a lot of people was not used. So and they told us they are bringing machines from England and that will take our job. So we support you, and we will toss the machine into the sea, and this is what they do. So but these quick machines were really quick, but in 1 minute, 60 minutes, with an engine, and so the cigar makers had a very hard manual work to do, and
Las he pillado haciendo ganchillo, cogían el trapo, ¡plaf!, a la espalda, que entraban con chaquetas blancas.
so she's telling anecdotes of their life, and it's hard to follow. Sorry about that.
Venga, que diga, el que quiera que diga quién ha sido, todas castigadas. Pues todas castigadas. Y había una maestra muy...
So it was a very hard situation, and there was one of the masters that were really upset with all we did. So she was member of Falange. She bear small pistols. So she would say, if you're brave, you don't have to ticking out. And so we said, kikiriki, kokoroko, kokoroko. So she went mad. So she didn't know exactly who was to blame for.
Bueno, pues hacemos ahora un punto y aparte en esta primera parte.
So this is the end of the first section, of the first part of today's morning. So you three are an example. You are the cigar makers that are famous. So thank you, and thank you, David, for the project. Continue working in the project. It was an honor for you to have you here at the university. So thank you very much. So let's take a coffee break of 20 minutes.
20 minutos.
So in 20 minutes, we'll
Pues continuamos esta.
We continue and resume today's session. Now, we'll introduce the speakers to deal with documentary movies and industrial movies. First, we will have Ms. Ángela Trigueros Garcia taking the floor, representing the Center of Preservation and Conservation of the Spanish Film Library, who will be dealing with the inventory of industrial cinema of the Spanish Film Library. She is going to be accompanied by Marian de Legido, the head or the director of the center, but she apologized for not being today with us, so Angela is going to take the floor on behalf of her as well. So she has a degree in audiovisual communication by Universidad Complutense of Madrid, and cinema script degree. And she's a civil servant specialized in libraries. She has been working for the National Library of Spain, and she specializes in cataloging and classification. Currently, she's working at the documentation department of the Spanish Film Library, and she works with the cataloging, purging, and the organization of film archives. So she combines technical expertise with the preservation of the cinematographic archives, and she's going to present the inventory of industrial cinema in the Spanish Film Library. So, Angela, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Good morning. First and foremost, I would like to thank the foundation and the organization for the invitation to tell you a little bit the job we do, how the film library works, and the tasks we've done with the industrial cinema and the inventory. Yesterday, we were talking about dissemination, and I think this kind of congresses and workshops are specific places to increase dissemination and show the job we do to preserve our cultural heritage, which is, by the way, the roots of our history. First of all, I would like to tell you how the film library works and what is the organizational chart and the functions and goals we have. And then I'm going to tell you the specific project, how the project came about to be, and how we continue working with the industrial cinema inventory. Sorry.
¿Quieres el teclado?
Sí, sí.
Vale. Bueno, para empezar, el organismo.
So, this is the organizational chart of the Spanish Film Library. As you can see on the slide, we are basically a body that is part of the ICAA, which is the institute that regulates cultural domain organizations, including, for example, the Film Library. And then we also have the Secretariat of State for Culture, and then the Spanish Library, Film Library. So we are the last step for the preservation of the cinematographic archives. We have three headquarters or sites. The Conservation and Restoration Center Carlos Saura, where we have the archives and all the associated film material, Cinetore, I hope you know it, where we show all kinds of movies. This is the projection hall. And then Palacio Perales, where we have the administration, the direction, the library, and one of the archives, because the other archives is in the Conservation and Restoration Center that will be called CCR from now on. It's important for me to highlight that when we talk about cultural heritage and when we talk about conservation, we need to bear in mind that our legal framework and the Constitution speaks about the importance of promoting and protecting access to culture and science, obviously. So many of the institutions that have participated here in these 2 days work to for the conservation and protection of this heritage, which is included in our legislation, and it's important to put value to that. And of course, we all know that the first thing that is beaten is culture. But we need to remember that the Constitution envisage conservation and preservation of our cultural heritage. So CCR is the film archive. This is where all the materials are. This is where I work, and I'm going to tell you my experience, because that, and together with the IPCE, we came up with a plan for the recovery and protection of industrial cinema and the creation of the inventory. The main goal of the CCR is to preserve, document, safeguard, and disseminate these cultural goods that are part of our cultural heritage. Some of the goals of the Center for Conservation and Preservation are identifying and recovery the different film collection and all the documents associated to these film collections. So not only are we talking about materials, but also scripts, heritage, cameras of the 30s, etc. So we are talking about everything that is associated to film archives. On the other hand, establishing something which is absolutely necessary. Conservation, restoration measures in the event materials are in different states, and also the preservation of collections. So maintaining and protecting all this would be meaningless if without the hard work of cataloging and identification of these materials. We were talking about this and saying how difficult it is for us to identify some film because they are not cataloged or ordered. So it's part of our job, because you can disseminate the things you know. So it is indispensable for this goal to be met in a very precise way, in a very thorough way. And lastly, something mentioned yesterday, how important dissemination is, because our job, if it is not disseminated, it doesn't exist. This is what it is. If people don't have access to our collections, to this information, to the archives, to films, to music, to everything, is like this don't exist. This doesn't exist. One of the projects of the film library is an audiovisual platform called Platfo, where you can search. It was launched in September, so we're still filling it up with content, and you can search many movies since 1895 on, the beginning industry, industrial cinema, colonial cinema, a lot of movies that might seem inaccessible to you, but this platform was created to favor accessibility and dissemination of content. So I invite you to take a look at that. I think I'm going to skip a little bit the role of departments, because it would be meaningless for me to talk about this, but we have a film collection service, a documentation service, and a preservation service. The most important thing about this service, regardless of the functions they have, is that they are cross-cutting departments, meaning they all work in projects, but together. Each department, when a project is implemented, they work in the project from the different perspective according to their different roles. So at the film library, we work together, which enriches us a lot, because we work with different kind of colleagues with different roles in different departments. Just a little overview of the job we do. So, and lastly, I would like to comment on the possibilities of opportunities that we considered important for the film library that should be part of the programs that are implemented by researchers with their research. So we need to support different cinematographic projects to disseminate, I insist on that, disseminate collection, because this creates an absolute cultural richness among the population. So this has always been said by people, but information is power. That's true. We need to favor this. We need to have population and people that are educated is indispensable. So support and enriching dissemination. Also, the training of professionals is key as well. through studies, grants, academic support, so researchers that can have access to the film library collections. This is one of the goals and one of the most important opportunities for us. Also, partnerships agreement, because we are a film archive. When we kick off a project, all the collaboration, all the agreements and the collaborations that are made in partnership are indispensable. And we are going to see that when we will be talking about the inventory. The task of many companies that deposited their collections in the film library and then supported us for the identification of material. So this kind of collaboration and partnership is key to develop our job. And then collaboration with the workshops and the dissemination. Dissemination, and I insist on that again, the dissemination of the cultural value of culture beyond commercial. At the film library, we have commercial film. Everything that is legally deposited is preserved because it's preserved not for tomorrow, but for 100 years from now. So the legal deposit is there. But everything that is previous, since 1895 to date, is part of a really indispensable historical record that is really valuable for the history of our country.
Industrial.
Let's move on to industrial cinema. I'm going to explain the origin of the inventory project and its development and where we are, where we stand. So this inventory, its origin is the National Industrial Plan, which is part of national cultural heritage. There are different levels of administration working there in a cross-cutting way. The main goal of Industrial Heritage Plan is developing criteria and methodologies in a coordinated way to implement coordinated activities, including actions which are critical, in particular with regards to industrial heritage, regarding protection, preservation, documentation, training, and dissemination once again. These are part of the initiatives that were originally included in the National Plan of Industrial Heritage, the study of optic network in Spain, catalogs of light, sugar industry, many projects that have been developed in parallel all those years. And obviously, the inventory catalog of industrial films in the film library collection. When the project was launched, well, before that, I want to explain the difference between an inventory and a catalog. An inventory is a sort of index where you say all the content the collection has in a summarized way. It's objective, all the content. A catalog obviously has longer descriptions. It's different. So what we did is actually inventory. So the inventory development you can access through the IPCE website or through the Spanish Film Library webpage. From the document service, you can access two inventories. There's preserved cinema from the beginning of the century and then industrial cinema, where we have all the films and materials we have at the film library and other film libraries. Well, that's an ongoing process that are in good state. Well, inventory development, this started in 2024. It was done by Jorge Pantoja, professor at Complutense University of Madrid. He's one of the researchers that has developed the highest number of projects with us. He's also a friend, and he launched this project. First of all, it was about identifying, differentiating between works and items. Works means intellectual and artistic content. It's intangible. It's not the materials themselves. And then we have the items. Items are materials as such. The duplicate of a positive, that's a material. A negative of an image or sound file, that's the material. And then the works, that's the intellectual artistic concept. So first of all, we needed to identify all the materials that we were keeping in our collection, works and items, because many of them weren't even associated between themselves. So it was a first screening process to identify which films that weren't catalogued as industrial film were actually industrial films. What was the goal behind this? It was generating a useful tool to identify, classify, and disseminate the film collection. This identification process was quite complex. Many of these films and materials, in particular before the 50s, with nitrates, weren't even identified because when there were the massive closures of labs, those materials were collected and they were put in our warehouses. We are understaffed, and little by little we opened the boxes and identified the materials. This work has taken us many years. So there were things that we could identify because it was pretty identified, and then we had new materials that we needed to open little by little, these tin boxes, to identify all the elements that came when labs closed. Once we knew what we had, we did another screening, a search screening, obviously through bibliography sources, through film contests from the 20th century, also through depositing entities. MOPU, the Ministry of Public Works, the INI, the National Industry Institute, Renfe, Iberdrola, Repsol, also what we inherited from Doran. So we did this screening. We created a list of materials that were properly reviewed, and we described and catalogued these works and items through our internal tool called Axial. This is what we work with at the film library. It started with 867 titles and 3,000 items, because each title has many materials associated to it. And as of today, we are still increasing this. We're close to 1,000 works. That's extraordinary, because that means many, many items, many associated materials. So about the inventory, through our website you can access, this is the site of the documentation department where the inventories are. We have these two inventories. As you can see, we can access the information through a search process. You can search by title, year, company, producing company. The information you have for a search, you can use it to search at the industrial inventory, which is updated according to all the materials we have this week. The last update was Monday. Right now we have several projects. We still have collaboration agreements. We work with Iberdrola. They have major film collections, and they're working to identify them all. And actually, we can check them all. Everything which is photochemical, magnetic and digital elements are not in the inventory, only photochemical ones. Iberdrola, they filmed in Betacam because it's the 80s, the 90s, so they're Betacam. They haven't been included in inventory, only photochemical. But that's part of a heritage and it's important. So challenges moving forward. We need to continue with the inventory. It's a critical tool for everyone. Researchers, people working in the industry, the factories themselves, or people interested in industrial films. So we need to continue to complete it, constant updates, also disseminating the initiatives. For example, this conference is a very important place for dissemination, also in Kuna and other spaces where we can favor dissemination. And also fostering access to industrial film heritage for any user. And I hope that after this, you're going to use the inventory. And Plafo, you had 3 minutes left. I think the mayor of Madrid should be scared you speak faster than he does.
¿Entendido bien?
No, se ha entendido perfectamente. Continuamos con la intervención.
So let's continue with Leticia Castro Leal and Laura Garcia. They are representing the Documentation and Library Department of Repsol. They're speaking about audiovisual heritage of this company, Repsol, a project from 42 to 1950. Leticia de Castro holds a PhD in documentation by this university. She has a degree in library and documentation science, same university, and also a degree in documentation in Carlos III University. Since 2000, she's been in charge of the Documentation and Library Department of Repsol. She leads a team specializing in management of corporate document heritage with relevant projects such as the preservation of the historic collection of the company, the Arctic World Archive. She spoke about this last year. We were really jealous. And she combines her work with being a professor in 2 universities. She's authored numerous books and papers. And she'll be presenting this together with Laura Garcia, her colleague with a degree in history by UCM, art history by UNED. And she's worked with Leticia for 5 years. So you have the floor. Well, I apologize because my voice is not in a very good state. I'll be starting, but the main part of the presentation will be presented by Laura, who's actually more familiar with this than I am. I would like to thank the foundation, the school and the university. I would like to thank Uria. He's a colleague, a friend. Thank you for remembering us. And I would like to thank Laura here, because she opened up this world for me, the world of Incuna, the world of industrial heritage, film library, this world. So before getting to the point, I wanted to give you some context. How long do we have? 20 minutes. More than in Cuna. So I'll give you some context. And Angela's presentation is great because I don't need to speak about the center, the inventory. We are Repsol, but Repsol as such was created in 1986. We are heirs of many companies. Companies owned by INI, the National Institute of Industry, and INH. And CEPI takes all these documents. Why am I saying this? So that we can all understand why we are in this project and why it's so complicated to get permissions to show the content that we're going to show, which are shown for the first time. We showed a bit in the international conference this year, but we're going to show a few more minutes for the first time. So Repsol was created in 1986, but before that we have Caso here. This is the political context situation. We're going to see how the national company was created by Calvo Sotelo, how oil refinery was created in Tarragona, Cartagena, and Petrolibe in Coruña. What am I trying to say with this? Repsol was born because there were many mergers and acquisitions. In 86, Repsol was created, and all the document heritage of those companies has to be moved somewhere. There were two options here. They either become part of Repsol's document heritage, and the other option was, okay, these documents that were generated, why this was called Empetrol in Caso Repesa, is given back to the original company. It doesn't exist anymore, so the SEPI takes it. So we have a complex legal situation because there's no document with granting a donation. There's no document that authorizes us, the owners, to use those materials, but SEPI calls us so that we take care of the restoration and a project to maintain this heritage. In other words, to pay for it. Back then, the Document and Library Department, well, there are people who've worked there too. Our budget was a good one for publications, books, subscriptions. But for archive, we didn't have that much money. So I was talking to Laura, and she said, I'm going to Incona, I'm going to present something at individual level regarding industrial heritage. And I said, okay, we could do this. That's why I wanted to thank her, because she opened this work for me. So we talked to Marian, to Domingo, we met with Encarni and Jorge to see what we could do. So we have a collection, and Laura is going to explain this later. You'll be able to see it. SEPI sees a collection, finds a collection they call Empetrol with many materials. Some of them, we couldn't recover them because they were too corrupted. They were destroyed. So first you need an inventory, a catalog, and then a digitalization process, because otherwise it's lost, it's destroyed. So it was urgent for us to do this. So what did we decide? We decided to hire someone who works with the film library in Carni, and we worked with her in an inventory catalog of these 35 films. This number was decreasing because they were getting destroyed. The part of films that you're going to see that you can barely see, and let's not speak about the sound. So we started with some films that we showed. There were some films that were being destroyed. And what we told the company was, we cannot allow industrial heritage to be destroyed. We're a pioneering company, we're a leading company in hydrocarbons in Spain. We cannot allow these materials to be destroyed. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to prevent the destruction We're trying to sign agreements with CEPI, and we request their authorization. I wanted to ask you, what do you do with PLAFO? Because we're really struggling to get the authorizations to show parts of these films that we've managed to preserve that are so important. They're so important to rebuild that heritage. In the documentation and library department, we manage all the document heritage, not just audiovisual, not just industrial. We have advertising heritage. So we have a large database, a catalog, and these films have an important position there. And because of our collaboration agreement with CEPI, we give them a copy of our film. So we are the owners, but we are not the custodians. So we work in a sort of complicated triangle, CEPI, film library, and ourselves. I think I'm not forgetting anything about the context, and I would like to give the floor to Laura. I would like to thank the Foundation for having me, and I would like to thank Leticia for making this happen. We were so thrilled about this project. It's true that we still need to disseminate this at a high level, but we're always happy to present this in this type of conferences. We did this a few months back in Incuna, and we're very happy to repeat this again. I won't speak for long because we wanted to show a 7-minute video. We chose the images that we thought were most interesting. Out of a total of 3 documentaries that have been digitalized in this cataloging and digitalization process that we've done in collaboration with the Film Library. These 3 documentaries belong to a Petrol film collection mentioned by Leticia, which has a total of 35 film canisters, which were in a really poor state. We carried out a thorough analysis, we labeled them, cataloged them, and then digitalized them. A total of 4 film canisters. Out of these 35, some of them have been virtually lost. And thanks to Encarniros's work, as Leticia said, she did the technical study of nitrates. So from these canisters, in these canisters there were many documentaries. I'll be focusing on these 3 documentaries that have been digitalized that are related to the history of industrial complexes Repsol has, but there are many materials that document the beginning of the construction of several industrial complexes in Puerto Llano, Cartagena, Ebro, Escatron, and Aspontes. The first 2, the refinery of Puerto Llano and the refinery of Cartagena, they belong to Repsol at present, and the digitalized materials correspond to these 2 industrial complexes. This is a reference to the canisters that were digitalized. The first one is in a really poor state. We cannot show it to you because the images were not really nice, but they give us valuable information. We're going to show these 3 canisters. they can consider too, because 7 and 11 contained materials that document the construction of Puerto Llano's facilities. This one had a title when we identified it. Creation of the industrial facility of Puerto Llano, situation of the works, October 1949, and then Canister 15, which had no title, and we added this title, and petrol oil industry. This corresponds to the creation of a Congreso facility in Cartagena. Which was inaugurated. Sorry, the speaker corrects herself. It's filmed at that point. This is an example of the technical sheets with the minutes. We use these to prepare the internal catalog. This is just for information purposes. I don't know what's happened with the presentation. Everything is a bit out of place, so I apologize. And before showing the video, which is the most interesting part, we think it's important to give you some context so that you can understand why were these films recorded, the historical context. They were ordered by the National Institute of Industry. Part of the material was used for the TV news known as Nodo in Spain. This started in 1942 with the aim of disseminating the dictatorship's ideology. An industrial film has an important role in the propaganda work by the regime in the 40s and 50s. It was not really focused on the dictator and the civil war, but rather the achievements, industrial achievements of economic development under Franco. So they filmed the construction of dams, hydropower stations, and refineries, such as the one we're going to see. And we wanted to mention director Luis Suárez de Lezo. He filmed some of the materials that we're going to show. He's a charismatic figure and a very interesting one. He was the director of the film department of the Navy the Ministry of the Navy. And this is an extract of a letter he addresses to Juan Antonio Suárez, the president of INI back then, in April 1945, and he wants to put his film knowledge at the service of INI. He had been working in such capacity for many years, with many difficulties, and this shows that films were going to be a means of propaganda for the state itself. It is very important for us to be presented not as a means of propaganda. They're a window to the past, they're a memory of work. And let's hope we can continue with this work of preservation and conservation at the archive in collaboration with the Film Library. And let's show the video. Maybe we can switch off the lights because it's black and white.
Ahí es que se va. Vale, listo.
So the celebration of the creation of the dam.
Esa es la presa.
So this is the dam used for Puerto Llano's refinery, because Puerto Llano is the only refinery without a sea nearby, without any kind of water stream nearby.
Y sí, a mí aquí me hace...
Please take a look, because there are mines in Puerto Llanos that are in operation since the 19th century. So these are old mines, and then the changes that occurred at the end of the 40s.
Luego, si queréis, os contamos lo que...
If you want to know more, we can talk to you about bituminous rocks if you're interested in that.
Aquí también estas imágenes que siguen a continuación.
So these images that you're going to see correspond to Puerto Llano village. I think this is the school and also a soccer match as well.
En todas las refinerías.
In all refineries, villages were created nearby for workers, and the houses of this village are still part of Puerto Llano's refinery. You can visit them, and the largest houses were for top management, and the smallest one was for workers. Everything was regulated. There were schools. They had a church for communion, so it was a village.
Esta es la siguiente.
And this is the following canister without any title. We call it Empetrol, or industry of oil, and that's the last canister. This is this corresponds to Cartagena, industrial complex. And these images correspond to their early works.
Pues
Okay, thank you, Angela, Leticia, and Laura, for your presentations, and thank you for the job you do to preserve and conserve such an important heritage for culture and the industry of our country. Let us now to conclude and close this gathering, even if it is a little sad for us.
Bien, pues llega el momento de la...
Good, the time has come for the closing ceremony. I am talking to you on behalf of Maria Olivera Saldúa, the Dean. Due to a personal issue, she could not attend, so she requested me to apologize on her behalf. I'm going to give the floor, first of all, to Miguel Ángel Álvarez Areces, Chair of INCUNA. Thank you. So thank you. Thank you, Juan Miguel. To this closing words represent a sad and happy moment. Sad because we finished 2 days when we shared experiences and we shared very interesting presentations as well. All these presentations are really related to our main goal at INCUNA, an institution that has been in existence for over 30 years, and people coming from different environment, from civil society and from the industry that coexist, engineers and workers work together, and we are all united by the wish to act, to defend, preserve, put value on the on heritage with the wholesome approach. But also we wanted to show you some practical applications on the territories. So the preservation of document heritage, like building, machines and tools, workers' memory, oral heritage, and stories of life, and the stories that we lived in factories or in industrial complexes, and very directly, or through our colleagues, parents, grandparents, and friends. In this case, all this can be used for us to act and implement initiatives on the territories to give a second life to some of the heritages we have and think into the future. And at the same time, we are happy to close this event because we end a period of work. We go back to our places, and the idea was to learn and to use this learning to continue working. Allow me to express my satisfaction and the pride I felt for having participated and worked with the Foundation Manuel Fernandez Lito, working with the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, the documentation department, the research group, having worked with other institutions like TICHI, SEDIC, who participate in this idea, which is consolidated already, that was started as an informal conversation. And then initiatives have been undertaking. This is the second Congress, and we need to start thinking about the third gathering and improve if possible. It's always difficult, but we can improve. I think these days have been very significant that contribute to disseminate and to be in contact, to learn from each other, and to continue developing our tasks in our day-to-day activities. So thank you very much. And now I give the floor to my friends here on the table. Thank you, Miguel Angel. I give the floor to Elise González Argüelles, member of Manuel Fernandez Lito Foundation. Good morning to everybody. First of all, I would like to convey greetings of the chair of the foundation. It's very difficult to match all agendas. I couldn't attend the Congress due to health concerns, but I know that everything that was dealt with during these 2 days have been extremely interesting. Manuel Fernandez Lito's foundation is relentlessly committed to history, documentation, memory, to recuperate elements of the past, understand them in the present, and looking into the future. We will maintain this commitment throughout time. We would like to thank the university. Please congratulate the dean for having us here in this room. I think this is the appropriate place for us to organize this kind of KANBAN Congress. I would like to thank Ikuna, Fotolog, TICHI, and all the collaborators, the speakers, who make a great effort to be here these days to talk about their experience and their vision on a topic. Obviously, we are a foundation inspired by trade unions and the Industry Federation of Trade Unions. We are part of the industry. We dwell in the sources of the past, but we want to live in the present. So preserving the industrial heritage to analyze what happened in the past, what happens now, and what might happen in the future is key to our organization. When we talk about industrial heritage, not only do we talk about paper, documents, and pictures, but a social footprint people leave, people who did all this industrial development, people who transformed industry, people who have been living for and depending on this industry in Spain, thanks to the industrial development, and how populations have been settled in different territories thanks to that. And when an industry disappears, and unfortunately the social tissues disappear as well, some of the villages have been abandoned after the closure of companies. I was looking at the Repsol signs, and I was thinking how these companies that were established in the 50s and 60s, not only were they a place where you can go to work, but also to live your social life, because houses were built for the top management and workers to live in the territories. And this is a teaching for the present, where housing is such a difficult place to match with current situation due to high prices of housing. So this is a challenge for the future. This is the second International Congress. Obviously, we'll start to prepare the third KANBAN Congress from today. This word was a little bit ambiguous at the beginning, KANBAN, strange and odd word for many people, but this summarizes what heritage is. Industrial heritage is not only images and pictures, but it's also papers and documents where each piece is a piece of one board, and each document represents a historical moment. Each person, each professional, each researcher working in this regard put order to this to be used by the rest of people. We need to have this wholesome approach. We need to require as well from administration resources to this. I think it is important to preserve industrial heritage, and to do that, resources are needed. It is also important for the industrial heritage to be known, to be disseminated, to be known by generations that might know what a chimney of an iron company is, or as concrete factory is. They should need what the evolution of history has been, and how we had to go through a long walk until the present. So a document is not something from the past, it's something for the present and for the future. It helps us to understand the long way we've gone through, and this gives us key to understand this present time with memory and with responsibility. Thank you very much. Okay, little is to be said now. I would like to thank you both for your closing words. I would like to thank and congratulate the speakers for their collaboration. This event would be meaningless without the support of many researchers. So the university is going to be there to support this. We have been here, and as someone said recently, commitment. The university must and will always be committed to carry out this kind of event. And lastly, I would like to congratulate Manuel Fernandez Lito Foundation for the effort made to organize all this, which requires a great effort and a great deal of work. So congratulations to the team and to the board. So the second International KANBAN Congress is now officially closed. And we'll see you at the third